Hello and good morning from a rather sunny Bradford. You join me outside of Bradford Interchange, one of the city's two main railway stations. Today we'll be heading down south, as they say, to London, travelling with open access operator Grand Central. Now, it's been a good few years since I last covered them on the channel, so I'm looking forward to seeing what, if anything, has changed. But first, let's see what the interchange has to offer. While the interchange, as the locals call it, might have a somewhat oppressive look to it, functionally I think it's superb. As well as the train station, the city's bus station is located within the complex, and there's also easy access to local taxis out the front, by where we entered. Also within Bradford Interchange, you'll find a Greggs, I mean, we are up north after all, a Java Joe's, who I'd highly recommend if you're ever in Bradford, as they do fantastic coffee, as well as the obligatory WH Smith's. Heading up to the railway part of the interchange, just off to the right as we reach the top of the escalator, you'll find a ticket office. There are also a few self-service ticket machines located nearby too, although, as I'm sure you're sick of hearing me say by now, it's definitely worth buying online and in advance, as there are some big savings to be made on this journey if you do. But more on that towards the end of the video. But for now, let's head through the gate line to platform 1 where our train awaits us. The service we'll be catching today is the 0758 to London King's Cross. Grand Central's fleet consists of 10 of these Class 180 Adelante diesel hydraulic multiple units. These units are part of Alstom's Coradia family of trains, and originally entered service with First Great Western, what is now GWR, in 2001, and have a top speed of 125 miles an hour, or 200 kilometers an hour. Now, they've had a bit of a fruitful history, shall we say. They were plagued with problems in their early days, but they're still going over 20 years later, and it wouldn't appear that Grand Central have plans to retire them anytime soon. Anyway, let's get on board, shall we? I'll be travelling in standard or second class today. While these trains date from the early 2000s, the interiors quite obviously do not, with Grand Central last refurbishing their fleet in 2018, and first impressions are that it looks rather nice, with the black and orange working really well for me. For standard class, I thought that legroom was really good, and certainly way more than I'd been expecting. However, as I had been expecting, the airline-style seats each come equipped with a tray table, of the large and sturdy variety at that as well. And there's one plug socket shared between each pair of seats, which is always great to see. Now, the seats, while well padded, are a bit awkward if you're on the taller side. As someone topping 6 foot, I found that the top of the seat was digging into my shoulder blades, and the only way of getting around this was to sit slouched in my seat, which, needless to say, is also not very comfortable. Now, my wife's quite a bit shorter than me, and she said she didn't have this issue, so it must be purely a height thing. But given that being around 6 foot isn't exactly rare, I highly doubt I'm the only one who has this issue with these seats. Anyway, do let me know your thoughts on these seats in the comments below. But in the meantime, let's take a quick look at where we'll be heading today. The first bit of our trip will see us doing a bit of a tour de West Yorkshire, initially travelling via Halifax, Brighouse, Mirfield and Wakefield, before joining the East Coast Main Line just north of Doncaster. After stopping at Doncaster, we'll run non-stop to London. Scheduled travel time today is 3 hours and 16 minutes, and will see us covering a distance of 208 miles, or 335 kilometres. And we depart Bradford on time at 2 minutes to 8. The first little bit of our trip sees us making a flurry of stops, the first of which is Moor. This is by far the newest station we'll be calling at today, well, sort of anyway. The current Moor station opened in 2017. Before this, the last time the Bradford suburb had its own railway station was in 1965, when it was closed by our good friend Dr. Beeching. A short time later, we stop at Halifax. Despite being a modestly sized town, Halifax is home to some big name brands, such as the headquarters of Halifax Bank and one of Nestlé's production plants. About 10 minutes after Halifax, we arrive at Brighouse. This is another sort of new station, having opened in 2000, ending a 30-year stint of the town not having one, with the original station having closed in 1970. After Brighouse comes Mirfield. Mirfield is located between the towns of Huddersfield and Dewsbury, and, amongst other things of course, is notable for being the birthplace of Sir Patrick Stewart, who appeared in movies such as the X-Men series, Romeo and Juliet, and Ted.
Doncaster and London King's Cross. Basic information is located in the sun. Please familiarise yourself with the information.
We come to a stop just outside of Wakefield Kirkgate station, as, much to my surprise, we're actually running about 10 minutes early at this point. The railway line you can see running perpendicular to us is the Wakefield line, which is a branch of the East Coast Main Line, running between Leeds and Doncaster. Eventually, once our platform clears, we pull into Wakefield Kirkgate. Of course, most services between Wakey and London operate from nearby Westgate station, which is situated on the aforementioned Wakefield line. After leaving Wakefield, we go on to pass through Pontefract and Nottingley as we make our way through the morning sun towards the East Coast Main Line and Doncaster. Around half an hour after leaving Wakey, we join the East Coast Main Line at Shaftholme Junction, just south of the town of Asken. A few minutes later, we arrive at our next stop, Doncaster. Donny is of course a city steeped in railway history, with nearby Doncaster Works being responsible for constructing some of Britain's most iconic steam locomotives, including the Flying Scotsman and Mallard. As I touched on earlier, after leaving Doncaster, we'll run non-stop to London, covering the remaining 156 miles or 251 kilometres to King's Cross Station in just 1 hour and 39 minutes.
The next station, London King's Cross. Basic information is located in the sun. Please
Right, now that we're not going to be interrupted by any more stops, let's head for a wander and see what else these trains have to offer. Either side of this disabled toilet, You'll find wheelchair spaces for standard and first class respectively. First class is somewhat weirdly located in the second coach from either the front or the rear of the train, depending on what way you're going. Personally, I think it would have made much more sense to swap the coach we're in and the first class coach around. If I'd forked out for first class, I would want a quiet experience, i.e. not having people walk past every 2 minutes heading to the buffet car. Speaking of the buffet car, here it is, located in the middle of the train. It's just the typical counter-style service that you'd normally get here in the UK. Now, I was looking forward to hopefully grabbing a coffee, but unfortunately, there were no hot drinks being served when I travelled, due to a technical fault. And the rest of the train is just made up of more standard class seating. It's good to see that this service is well utilised, although when I tell you just how much I paid for my ticket later on, you'll probably see why. As for the toilets, nothing out of the usual really. They were looking a bit battered and grotty, but everything worked and was maintained to an acceptable standard at least. And lastly, as you would expect, this train is kitted out with complimentary Wi-Fi, which also doubles up as the onboard entertainment system, which is nice. Sadly though, it was rather slow, to the point where my usual speed test wouldn't work. Anyway, we're now battering along the East Coast Main Line's up line at 125 miles an hour. Perhaps I'm warming to these Adelante units a bit, as while by no means smooth, the ride quality wasn't as bad as I remembered it being. That said though, being a diesel train, the engines do have a tendency to cause the coaches to vibrate, and needless to say, they're way noisier than an electric train would ever be, particularly when travelling at speed. Soon enough, we find ourselves in Thameslink land, meaning the capital can only be so far away, so I should probably think about giving a quick summary. For me, the seats would have been fine if it wasn't for the poorly thought out headrest digging into my shoulder blades. Again, while I'm tall, I wouldn't exactly consider myself a giant, so I can't be the only one with this problem. It's a shame really, as bar this, the seats were more than comfy enough and the legroom was certainly more than adequate. So I'll be awarding Grand Central a 6 out of 10 in the comfort category. In terms of occupancy, well, as you saw, the train was quite busy. That said, if you book in advance, you're going to have a seat reservation, so this isn't really going to be much of an issue. I'm sensing a reoccurring theme over the last few videos, but I'll be putting occupancy at medium. Now, these trains featured pretty much everything one might have expected from an intercity train. Both standard and first class seating was available. Plug sockets could be found at each set of seats. There were plenty of well-appointed toilets, even if they were looking a bit worse for wear. And of course, there was a buffet car, although sadly for me, I wasn't able to get that much needed coffee. But overall, certainly good in terms of amenities. And on the surface, punctuality was good too. Well, more than good actually, as all 4 of Grand Central's services from Bradford to London on the day I travelled arrived on time. However, this tends to be either really good or really bad with Grand Central. They only have a limited number of trains, so if there is a bit of disruption, such as the day before I travelled, then it isn't uncommon for 2 or more of the services to be cancelled outright. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, I thought the tickets for this trip represented exceptional value for money, with my advance single costing me just £12.20, including railcard discount of roughly a third. Even without a railcard, the same ticket would have cost £18.50. And believe it or not, this isn't even the cheapest I've seen it at either, with tickets starting at a little over a tenner if you have a railcard. So while the seat is perhaps not the comfiest, and these Adelantes are still far from being my favourite trains, I think I can very easily overlook all of this when you consider just how cheap the tickets are, and I even think you get quite a bit for what you pay too. However, they are just my opinions, so do be sure to let me know yours in the comments below. And at long last, we emerge from the gasworks tunnel to arrive into King's Cross Station bang on time at 11:10. Right, I'm off to go and make the short walk across the road to catch my connecting train from St Pancras. However, in the meantime, I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to give it a like, comment and subscribe to the channel, as all of them help me out immensely. Also, don't forget to hit the bell icon so that you get notified each and every time I upload. A special thanks as always goes to my fantastic patrons and channel members. If you want to join them in supporting the channel, or while gaining ad-free access to my videos, then you can do so from just £1, $1 or euro per month. You'll find the relevant links in the description below. With that, all that's left for me to say is thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you all next Friday.
Train's being held together by tape, but
I'm glad I know that now I'm already in London.